All right, let's dive into a fascinating legal puzzle. It all starts with what seems like a simple handshake over a beautiful piece of art, but it ends up at a crossroads between a fair deal and a total financial disaster.
And at the absolute center of this whole mess is this number, $50,000. I mean, for most of us, that is a huge amount of money, right? The kind you'd only spend on something you believe is the real deal.
And that's exactly what this was supposed to be. That 50 grand was the price for what everyone believed was an original painting by the legendary Australian artist Sidney Nolan. You know, a real collector's idol.
But, and here's where it all goes wrong, the painting wasn't a Nolan at all. It was a fake. Now, it was a really good fake, good enough to fool both the buyer and the seller. But at the end of the day, it was completely worthless.
So we've got a fake painting sold for $50,000. Sounds like it should be an open and shut case, right? Well, the legal reality is so much more complicated. To really get why, we need to meet the two people at the heart of this deal and see how it all went down.
Okay, so on the surface, the facts are pretty straightforward. We have our buyer, Dave. He's at the seller, Esther's, house, and sees a painting he absolutely loves. He asks her, "Is that a Sidney Nolan?" And she says, "Yes, it is." So they shake on a price, $50,000. Deal done. The problem, of course, is that the entire foundation of their deal, that the painting was authentic, was just wrong.
So what can Dave do now? I mean, it seems obvious he should just get his money back, shouldn't he? Well, this is where the law gets weird, because the answer almost entirely depends on one single surprising thing: when he found out he'd been duped.
So let's play this out in two completely different timelines. In scenario A, Dave finds out it's a fake almost right away, just a week later. But in scenario B, 5 long years go by before he has any clue. And as you're about to see, that gap in time changes absolutely everything.
Okay, let's explore Dave's first possible legal argument. This one is all based on the idea of a common mistake. The notion that this was just a genuine, honest-to-goodness error that both he and Esther made together.
So what is a common mistake in legal speak? Well, think of it this way. Both Dave and Esther are looking at the same map, but the map itself is completely wrong. Neither one was trying to pull a fast one. They were both just operating on the same bad information, both genuinely believing the painting was real.
But here's where the law gets really tricky. This quote from a famous judge, Lord Denning, highlights a subtle but crucial point. He basically argued that the contract was for that specific painting hanging on the wall. They weren't mistaken about which object they were buying and selling. They were only mistaken about its backstory. And legally, that tiny distinction can be massive. It means the contract isn't automatically void.
So here's the bottom line for this path. If Dave figures it out after just 1 week, a court is probably going to say, yeah, this is totally unfair, and they'll likely set the contract aside. But after 5 years, the court's going to say, sorry, too much time has passed. The deal stands, and on this argument, Dave is out of luck.
Okay, so that common mistake idea gets pretty weak after 5 years. But what if we look at this from a totally different angle? What if Esther's comment, "Yes, it's a Nolan," wasn't just part of a mutual mistake, but was actually a core promise of the deal, a promise that has now been broken?
This approach is called a breach of term. And the thinking is pretty simple. The artist's name wasn't just some casual detail, it was the entire reason for the sale. Dave wasn't buying a painting, he was buying a Nolan. And when Esther confirmed it, that statement basically became a fundamental condition of the contract.
And once again, time is the absolute game changer here. If Dave acts within a week, he can repudiate the contract, which is just a fancy legal term for rejecting the painting and getting a full refund. But 5 years later, the law says he's waited too long. He can't give the painting back anymore. His only move is to sue for damages, which is basically just suing to get that 50 grand back.
Right, so we've got the broken promise path. But there is one more avenue for Dave to explore. What if we don't treat Esther's statement as a promise, but instead as an innocent misrepresentation? Basically, a false statement that convinced Dave to buy, even if she had no idea it was false. Now, this is key. Remember, Esther wasn't a con artist. She genuinely believed the painting was real. But the statement she made was still factually wrong, and it's the direct reason Dave handed over all that cash. And that, my friends, is the textbook definition of an innocent misrepresentation.
And wouldn't you know it, that same judge, Lord Denning, had something to say about this too. He argued that even an innocent mistake, if it's a big one, can be enough to rescind or just totally cancel the whole contract even after the money's been paid and the painting is on the wall.
This is potentially a really powerful way out for Dave. But, and you probably saw this coming, that escape hatch slams shut over time. Just like with the common mistake argument, the power to cancel the whole deal is an emergency lever you have to pull quickly. After 1 week, Dave can almost certainly undo the entire sale. But after 5 years, that right is gone. Poof, no remedy available.
So we've walked through 3 different legal paths Dave could take. We've looked at it as a common mistake, a broken promise, and an innocent lie. After all that, where does this leave him and his $50,000 problem? What's the final verdict?
Okay, here it is all laid out side by side. And wow, the difference is just staggering. If Dave acts fast, within a week, he's got multiple solid ways to cancel the deal and get his money back. But if he waits 5 years, 2 of his best options completely disappear and the third one gets a lot weaker, leaving him with just the hope of winning a lawsuit. Time, in every single scenario, is the one thing that decides everything.
So what's the big lesson we can all take from Dave's very expensive education? It's that when you're making a big deal, doing your homework is crucial. But just as important is acting fast the second you think something's not right. In the eyes of the law, hesitating can be just as damaging as making the first mistake.
And this whole story really brings us to a fundamental question that the legal system is always wrestling with. On the one hand, you want to fix an obvious injustice, like what happened to Dave. But on the other hand, contracts need to mean something. There has to be a point where a deal is final so everyone can move on. So how long is too long for a mistake to be fixed? It's a really tough balancing act, and there's no easy answer.